can you just give us some sense about why we have seen delays? Has it been that Hamas or Israel has made any further demands, further to what was in the proposal that was that was agreed upon 24 hours ago? And are you expecting any further delays?
We are hoping that we don't see any delays, and I think we've reached a point now where everything is in place and we are ready to go on the ground. So we are hopeful that, as I told you, by 7 a.m. tomorrow, everything will stop and we'll have the beginning of the humanitarian truce or pause. When it comes to what delays, what were the reasons of the delays, I can tell you that the discussions over the details and the schematics of how this will happen were very difficult and very detailed, because we wanted, as I said, to make sure that nothing would cause harm in the process of getting the hostages out, but also that the parameters of the agreement are agreed upon in the operational sense between both sides, and that took a lot of discussions between both sides. But we are happy to report that the discussions happened in a very positive environment where both sides showed their commitment to the agreement itself.
Sorry, any further demands?
I am not aware of any further demands that resulted in the delay, but as I told you, the agreement is still as it stands and as it was agreed upon from day one.
Thank you. Yeah.
معنية بهذه الهدنة وتشملها.
Joining me once again is Lester Munson. Mr. Munson, you were hearing Dr. Ansari talk about that there would be a pause tomorrow at 7 a.m. of hostile activities so that humanitarian aid could get in and so that those 13 women and children could be released by Hamas. But also he talked about, one of the questions was, what was the pause? Why was there a reason in the delay? Was there a demand for more? And he couldn't necessarily speak to that, which goes back to your point of how Hamas can't necessarily be trusted to follow through on what they say. Could this temporary ceasefire give Hamas a strategic advantage over Israeli forces?
Well, I think Hamas is certainly trying to use this, whatever ceasefire occurs, as a way to gain military advantage. Israel, of course, will be very concerned about that. In addition, on the humanitarian aid situation, those are very difficult negotiations as well. Hamas in the past has used humanitarian aid for its own military ends. It's not necessarily giving that assistance to the people who are most in need. It is diverting gas and other things to its military forces. So there's a lot of assurances that need to be built into this, and I think that's what the Qatari spokesman is talking about here when he says there's a lot of arrangements that need to be made. There are the method in which aid is delivered, the timing, the situation of where the hostages will be released and to whom. All of these things are critically important and, of course, happen in the context of a very difficult and fraught military situation between Israel and Hamas.
And Mr. Munson, you just talked about that, how all of this has to happen in that fraught situation. The Dr. Ansari, the spokesperson there, definitely said that that pause would happen to make sure that even the aid going in and that the aid workers would also be safe. Is the relationship clearly between Qatar and Hamas one that would not be violated? Because we do know that both the United States and Hamas have interest in Qatar. So is it likely that Hamas would not violate that disagreement once Qatar said, hey, we need to make sure that aid gets into this area safely to those who need it most? They can safely assure to others and aid workers going in that they will be safe.
It's an excellent question. Qatar has been a go-between between a lot of the different parties in the Middle East that are, have adversarial relationships. At the center of all of this that we haven't even mentioned yet is the nation of Iran. Iran is a big supporter of Hamas. Iran was almost certainly involved in the planning of the attacks on Israel in early October. Iran has not been mentioned. Qatar is a country that has good relationship with Iran. Not many countries fall into that category. Can Qatar be relied upon? It's a good question. They've received praise from both the Israeli government and the American government. I take that very seriously. So I think Qatar's been a good interlocutor here. Remember, on the ground in Gaza, it's not just Hamas that holds hostages. We have reports that Palestinian Islamic Jihad, another terrorist group, also has hostages. There may even be Israeli and other hostages being held by local criminal gangs. So there's quite a complex situation on the ground.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.